Good evening, everyone that's just joining us. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come and learn about the Caltech Metal Finisher site. We're just going to take a couple of minutes here to wait for everyone to join us and to get set up and settled in. So please bear with us a couple of minutes. Again, we thank you for taking the time to join us. And for those of you just joining us, my name is James Gambrell. I'm the Public Participation Specialist for the Caltech Metal Finisher site. Again, welcome everyone. For those of you just joining us, I see there's some that just clicked in. So again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to learn about the Caltech Metal Finisher site in your neighborhood. We'll get started in just another minute. So again, thank you for joining us. We have some more folks just joining us. So again, thank you for joining us. My name is James Gambrell. I'm your Public Participation Specialist for the Caltech Metal Finisher site. We'll be starting in just another minute as we give everyone time to get settled in. All right, it is 6:03, so I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so for those of you joining the meeting tonight, we will be uh, having language interpretation in 3 different languages: English, Spanish, and Mandarin. So in order to continue listening to the presentation, you'll need to make a language selection. So for those of you that are on the desktop or laptop, if you hover your mouse at the bottom of your screen, the menu will pop up and you'll be able to see a little globe icon at the bottom. So you'll see number 1, the globe icon. Once you choose the globe icon, then you'll be able to choose your language of choice. If you're listening on your smartphone, then you'll have to go to the bottom again, and you might have to, depending on the size of your screen, it may be a small screen, so you may have to scroll left or right. And at the bottom, you'll see 3 dots, an ellipse. You'll choose the more, and then you'll go to the globe icon again where it says interpretation, and then you'll choose your language of choice. So I'm going to pause for a moment and let the Spanish translator, interpreter, give those instructions, and then we'll have those same instructions in Mandarin.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por estar aquí el día de hoy. Vamos a comenzar. En la pantalla podrá ver las instrucciones. Hoy tenemos 3 diferentes lenguajes que se van a estar hablando. Tendremos interpretación en español y mandarín. Para poder escuchar la presentación en cualquier idioma, tendrá que seleccionar, por favor, un idioma. Para esos que están en una computadora o una laptop, usted puede utilizar el mouse y podrá ir hacia abajo al globo terráqueo que dice interpretación. Cuando usted haga clic o seleccione ese globo, entonces ahí usted va a escoger su lenguaje si quiere escuchar el español. Si está en un dispositivo, un teléfono inteligente, va a ser un poco diferente si va a ver allí en la porción de abajo, pero dependiendo del tamaño de su pantalla, usted vendrá o en la izquierda o la derecha va a ver 3 puntitos, el elipse, y usted va a poner ahí más o more. Y luego va usted a escoger el globo terráqueo y va a escoger si quiere escuchar en español, seleccionará el español. Ahora escucharemos las instrucciones en mandarín.
Okay, now we'll have the Mandarin instructions.
各位听众，晚上好！欢迎各位莅临参加今晚的网络研讨会。今天晚上的网络研讨会除了英语以外，我们还将提供西班牙语以及中文普通话的翻译服务。如果各位是用笔记本电脑或者说是台式机来进行登录的话，在您屏幕的右下方将看到一个地球标记，请点击这个地球的标记，选择 Chinese， 您所想要听 收听的这个语言方式，然后您就可以收听到本次现场提供的同声翻译服务，中文普通话的同声翻译服务。如果您是用智能手机来进行登录本次网络研讨会的话，同样的在您的屏幕的右下方会看到有3个点，有一个 more 更多的这么一个标志，请您点击。随后呢，它会弹出窗口显示也是相同的地球的按钮，使用翻译的服务，并且点击选择 Chinese 中文的翻译服务。谢谢各位，我们的会议马上开始。
Thank you. Okay, now we will go to the next slide. Some meeting logistics. So we kindly ask everyone to make sure you stay muted throughout the presentation. There's a lot of information and we want everyone to be able to hear it. So please make sure you stay muted. And again, if you're just joining us, make sure you use the globe icon on the toolbar to choose your language of choice so you don't miss out on any of this important information. If you need any technical assistance, please use the raise hand feature in the participants tab, or you could press *9 if you are dialing in from the phone and you're not able to hear. The presentation will go for about 30 minutes. We'll pause kind of in the middle to kind of see if there's any questions that can't wait until the end, but we're going to try and hold all the questions until the very end. So during the presentation, the Q&A feature will be active, so you can actually type your message or your question using the Q&A feature. And at the very end, we'll do our very best to answer all the questions possible. So again, I really want to take the time to say thank you for joining us and to learn about the Caltech Metal Finishers site. And with that, I'm going to transfer you over to your project manager, Moises Carvalho, or Mokes.
Good evening. My name is Mokes Carvalho, and I'm the lead project manager with DTSC. We're here tonight to talk about the former Caltech Metal Finishers site on the 31st Street, Oakland. Our goal is to share what we have learned, explain our proposed approach for the cleanup of the site, and most importantly, to listen to your questions and feedback. This meeting is an important step for us to engage with you, the community, before the formal regulatory process for the cleanup begins. Also, I would like to take a moment to introduce the rest of the DTSC team here with me tonight. Karina Navarro, the unit chief. Can you wave for us, Karina? And Sam Colbert, also the public participant specialist. Thank you. Next slide. So our purpose of tonight meeting is a fourfold. First, we want to be transparent and share the findings of the detailed environmental study known as Remedial Investigation Feasibility Study. Second, we plan to present a proposed cleanup approach that we believe is the most effective. Third, and the most crucial for us is to listen to you. This is your neighborhood, and your input is very important. Finally, we will clarify the road ahead, including the formal public participation process where you can submit your official feedback. Next. So this slide shows the map that highlights the exact location of the former Caltech metal finisher site on the 31st Street. As you can see, it's identified by this red box. Next. Understanding the site. Now, regarding to the site history, the property was home to a metal plating business for over 50 years, from 1947 to 2001. Their operations included electroplating and polishing, which required the use of various industrial chemicals. Currently, the site is vacant and fenced off, and all the original buildings were demolished in 2008. Next. As part of the history of investigation action, a lot of work has already been done to understand and address the contamination. After the metal plating business was abandoned, the USPA and the DTSC stepped in. We have conducted multiple investigations to map out the contamination. We have removed hazardous waste, and from 2009 to 2012, we installed and operated a temporary soil vapor system, which is like a soil vacuum system to pull the chemicals vapors out of the ground. During the same time, we also conduct a pilot study, essentially a test run of a chemical cleanup method to see if this technology would work. Next. So this slide shows 5 steps we follow for the cleanup process from start to finish. First, site discovery, how we first learn about the site. Then we move to investigation. This is where we collect samples to understand how the contamination is spread. Then we move to remedy selection. This is where we are at right now. For the Caltech site, we are evaluating how the cleanup of the site. Then the evaluation is complete. We move to the remedy implementation. This is actual hands-on cleanup work. Then, if needed, we move to operation maintenance. We will monitor the site long-term to make certainty that the remedy is working. Next. So the third part of the cleanup process, the remedy selection, includes the remedy investigation and feasibility study, which is a 2-part process we use to address contaminated sites. The first part of the remedial investigation, which is like a med exam for the site, is similar to going to the doctor and find out what caused your illness. We want to answer the question like, what exactly was left behind in the soil and the water? How deep and how far has the contamination spread? For the remedial investigation, we analyze the information gathered from the soil, groundwater, and soil gas samples. Next. The second part, it is a feasibility study, which it is like the treatment planning phase. In this phase, we look at all possible way to clean up the site, compares the pros and the cons for each technology, and choose the best option. Our presentation will follow the same logic. First, the investigation results, and then the proposed solutions. Next. So basically, the first question is where the contamination is found. So this diagram shows where the contamination is found. So to understand the cleanup, we first need to know where to look for the contamination. This simple diagram shows the different layers where the contamination may be found. At the surface level or the area beneath the ground, areas of contamination may include the following: the air. It is the air that we breathe above the ground. Ground surface is the top of the land, and soil, the layer of dirt, sand, or clay directly beneath the surface. Next. So this slide shows the same diagram, but looking at the subsurface, which is often where the contamination is. We call soil gas. This is not the air that we breathe. It is the air trapped in the teeny gaps between the soil particles. Vapors from chemicals can move through these teeny gaps. Water table, the level where the ground becomes completely soaked with water. Groundwater, the fresh water that fills the soil and the rock below the water table. When we investigate a site, we are testing the soil, the groundwater, and the soil gas to find out exactly where the chemicals are. Next. What did you find at the site? The contamination falls into 3 different categories. So we found what we call volatile organic compounds. This is a technical term, but it basically means that this compound can easily turn into vapor or gas at room temperature. A common example you might be familiar with is the smells from gasoline or fresh painting. Those are also VOCs. So basically, those chemicals that go to gas to room temperature, we call volatile organic compounds. The most significant volatile compounds, or we call VOC, is a trichloroethylene. We also use an acronym. It is a TCE, which is an industrial solvent used like a strong cleanup agent for metal parts. In addition to VOCs, we also found heavy metals like lead, nickel, and hexavalent chromium, all of which are common in the metal plating industry. We also detect cyanide, which it is a byproduct of metal plating process. These chemicals were released into the soil and groundwater over many decades when the facility was in operation. Next. The main contaminants in the soil. The main contaminants we found are lead, nickel, hexavalent chromium, and cyanide. Where we found them? We found mostly in the central and eastern portions of the site, which aligns with the former plating and chemical storage areas. How deep? This is an important distinction. We found that the metals are mostly concentrated in the shallow soil within the first 3 feet. However, a different type of contaminants, the VOCs, especially the trichloroethylene, or TC for short, were found in much deeper. The Remedial investigation showed high concentrations of TC in soil and soil gas from near the surface down to depths of 20 to 30 feet. This is why our proposed cleanup solution must address both shallow and deep contamination. Next. What is the main contaminants in soil gas and groundwater? The contamination was just not found in the soil. We also found TC in soil gas and groundwater. TC is concentrated in the center and south portion of the site in the areas of the old tanks and piping. Leakage occurred. In the groundwater, TC from the soil has seeped down into the shallow groundwater, which is about 8 to 15 feet below grade. In soil gas, TC in soil and groundwater can turn into gas or vapor that fills the airspace between the soil particles. This is the primary concern for the potential exposure. It is important to note that the groundwater at the site is not used for human consumption. Water consumption is from the East Bay Municipal Utility District, the EMUD. DTSC and the other regulatory agencies have identified the area's groundwater as a drinking water source. However, the water that reaches your homes are supplied from the different non-subsurface source. Also, a land use covenant will be implemented to prohibit the use of groundwater from the site. Next slide. So this slide here, it is to show about the vapor intrusion pathway. What is important? On the last slide, I indicated that we found VOC, especially TC, in the soil gas and groundwater. These lead directly to one of the most important pathways we evaluate, which it is called vapor intrusion. The diagram of this slide shows what happens when chemical vapors migrate upwards from both contaminated soil and groundwater. If a building is located over this area, which has a contamination, these vapors can find ways to migrate upwards. They can seep through small cracks in the foundation and gaps around utilities pipes, such as cable, electricity, or water, and eventually mixing with the indoor air. Or the entire process, the migration of the chemical vapors from the surface into the building, is what we call vapor intrusion. Next slide. I'm sorry, there is one more comment here. And I'm sorry. And the primary contaminants that we're evaluating for these specific pathways are the volatile organic compounds, which pose the vapor intrusion risk. We're gonna have the middle, questions, Q&A section. So if you have any questions that we just cover about the findings of our investigation, essentially defining what we believe it is a problem regarding soil, groundwater, and soil gas contamination, we are here to take any questions on that topic. But also we're gonna be able to address those questions also by the end of the presentation as well.
Okay, so if you could just raise your hand, click the raise hand icon, and then we'll call on you. You can ask your question, or you could type it into the question and answer. And it looks like we do have one question. Does the conceptual model apply for new buildings?
Yes, I would say yes. If new buildings are built on the property, the conceptual site model will be applied. For those ones that are not very familiar with this terminology, that implies that how we understand how the contamination is distributed under the subsurface. Yes, do would apply.
Okay, don't see any raised hands. And let me check the question and answer. I don't see any more. Oh, there's one more question here. The question is, have you tested the drinking water locally?
I mean, the water that's being provided, the mud? No, we have not tested, but that water are being collected from areas that's not related to the site. That's the reason why we have not tested the water that's being provided to the local community. We don't believe that the groundwater has impact the water that's being provided to the community. First, because the pipes, the utility that's provide the groundwater to the community, it's above the groundwater, thus unlikely that the contamination might be in contact with the piping that's conveying the groundwater. I'm sorry, conveying the drinking water.
So basically what you're saying, Mokes, then is that the drinking water is completely separate from the water that's in the ground, just kind of hanging out in the ground
I
below
would
the
say
surface.
there are two folds. First, the groundwater that's being provided to the community is not from the site, come from someplace else. So that's a different source. Second, the piping that's conducting the groundwater to each residence is above the water table. So it's unlikely that the contamination that is in the soil, it is getting into the piping and impacting the water quality.
Okay. We'll answer. We've got three more questions here, and then we'll move on. So the first question we have is, how has the contamination spread since DTSC began investigating this site?
Okay, the contamination spreading means that how the contamination is migrating off-site. So most of our efforts, it is to do the remedial investigation on-site. So we have collected data from soil vapor, and groundwater on-site, and we have installed one well to collect groundwater samples that has installed along the 30th Street, which is one of the streets that borders the site. We have collected groundwater from that location. Right now, as some of the community members that lives near to the site, they might be seeing us doing some investigation on the 31st and the 30th Street. And with this investigation, we're collecting soil gas samples to find out how far the contamination has spread as soil gas. And also in a later stage, we also, when we get those data, we're gonna assess and make the correlation with the information we have on site. And we also might install additional groundwater monitoring wells to understand how far and the groundwater contamination has spread from the site.
Thank you, Mokes. And our next question, was current and proposed land use considered in the sampling and analysis process?
We are considering that the site property will be remediated, so it's going to be cleaned up to residential standards. So the main objective, it is to return the site, the property, to beneficial use where we'll be able to, depends on the partnership that we're going to be able to attain in the future, to low-income households. So that's the main intention. It is to return the property to residential beneficial use, which also this property, which is, this site, it is also zoned to be used as a residential in the future.
Okay. And the last question we'll take in this section, and then we'll finish up the rest of the questions at the end. What are the impacts to adjacent properties? And is there adequate sampling on those properties?
That's a very good question. And we are right now in an effort to assess how the contamination has impacted some of the properties that immediately adjacent to the site. We're going to be outreaching those property owners, which we're going to be asking them if they're going to allow us to collect soil samples from their property. So therefore, we're going to be able to assess if there is any dust that has deposit on those property that might be causing any impact. So we're going to find out on that. Also, we're going to be, we are in this moment doing a public outreach with residents who live immediately near to the property. We would like to collect what we say indoor samples, and if they're allowed also to collect samples beneath their house foundation. Having those information, we will be able to assess if the soil gas that's on site has migrated to their property and has posed any risk on their indoor, posing risk and impacting the indoor air quality. So we're going to be at the end of this presentation. We're going to provide more information. Perhaps we can add more information for those residents that are interesting to allow us to collect indoor samples at their property.
And you've probably seen some of our team in the field in the last few days also doing sampling. So I also wanted to take a quick moment to say thank you for those that have helped us by moving their cars to allow our team to sample in the areas surrounding the site. So with that, we'll go ahead and move forward to the next slide, and then we'll continue answering questions at the very end. Thank you, Mokes.
Thank you. So now we're going to go to slide 19, which it is why the cleanup is necessary. This brings us to the most important question. So why this cleanup is necessary? We conduct a detailed assessment to evaluate potential human health risk. This assessment concluded that if the site were developed with homes today without any cleanup, it would pose risk to human health. And the big concern of that risk to human health, it is the vape intrusion pathway that I just mentioned. The potential from those chemicals, vapors beneath the ground, gets in the homes and the buildings. Our cleanup plan is specifically designed to eliminate the risk and make the site safe. Next. What we are trying to achieve. So what is our goal? And what does clean mean here? First and foremost, our goal is to protect human health by cleaning the site to meet the strict safety standard for a residential neighborhood. Second, we want to stop the contamination of the groundwater from spreading further. And third, and the ultimate goal is to make the property safe so it can be productive, part of the community again. Next slide. What is the proposed cleanup alternative that we are considering? Our team of engineers and scientists analyzed 4 alternatives. Alternative 1 is a no action scenario. This is required by the regulations, but since contaminants pose a risk, it's not an option that we will choose. So we just carry that alternative as a comparison. Alternatives 2, 3, and 4 are the actual cleanup options. They vary in terms of cost, effectiveness, and impact on the community. Next. So comparing the proposed cleanup alternatives, as we compare the proposed cleanup alternatives, we need to keep these three standards in mind. First, protecting human health. This is our most important benchmark. This is non-negotiable. Second, preventing migration. The cleanup plan must control the contamination. We should ask, does this effectively stop the contaminated groundwater from moving off-site into the neighborhood? And third, enabling future use. We want these sites to be safe and usable to the community. Next slide. So evaluating the proposed cleanup alternatives. As you can see, there are several features that we considered. To select the best proposed cleanup alternative, we formally evaluate each of the alternatives against a set of criteria. We look at how well it protects public health, how long it will take to clean up the contamination, the estimated cost, how feasible it is to implement in this neighborhood, and how well it removes the contaminants. This helps us to find out the most balanced cleanup alternative or solution. Next. So now I'm going to go over of the proposed cleanup alternatives. So the alternative 2, which is a deep excavation, this approach is very effective at remove all the contamination quickly. However, this would highly impact the neighborhood. We estimate that would require about 15,000 cubic yards of soil, needing approximately 1,500 dump truck trips through your streets. This would create a prolonged noise, dust, and traffic safety issues because of this high level of disruption in a residential area. The deep excavation would require also shoring of walls to protect the surrounding homes and buildings. This also increased disruption to the community and costs. We do not recommend this option. Next slide. So the next slide, we are considering it is alternative 4, which it is a shallow excavation and thermal heating. This cleanup, it is to divide in two-part process. Initially, it is a shallow excavation. First, removes shallow soil with impact with metals and cyanide and DTSC. So removing approximately 3,000 cubic yards of soil. This option starts with the removal of the excavation. Then we go with the thermal heating. The deeper soil would be heated, making the volatile organic compounds, particularly TC, evaporates from the soil and groundwater. The vapor that's coming out from the soil and the groundwater would be then captured and treated at the surface. The process is fast, but the cost, it is the second highest. The drilling, the heating operation would be the source of noise and disruption, and also there is a risk that these contaminated vapors could move to in unpredictable ways and potentially migrate off-site before we could capture them and treat them. So we may have the possibility to make the problem worse. So this is a less reliable choice during the vapor migration. And finally, it is the proposed cleanup, the alternative 3, which it is soil excavation followed by bioremediation. Similar to the previous cleanup alternative, the alternative 3, it is also a two-part process. First, it is a target soil excavation for metals, cyanide, and TCE. Contamination near the surface will dig up and haul them away. This is a much smaller and manageable job. So about 3,000 cubic yards instead of the initial 15,000 cubic yards for alternative 2, the deep excavation. This would drastically reduce the traffic noise, the traffic along the neighbor streets, and the dust emissions. Second, For the deeper TC contamination, we will treat in place without digging up the contamination. The combination of excavating surface contaminants such as metals and treating the deep contamination that's being packed by TC with bioremediation offers the best cost-benefit ratio. The technology bioremediation, while slower, it is a low environmental impact solution that permanently destroys the contaminants on site without the need for deep excavations, which would be expensive and disruptive. Next. So why we do recommend the alternative 3? We recommend this alternative because it offers the best balance among the criteria that we have considered. It is highly protective, permanently remove the contamination while being less disruptive to your neighborhood than a massive excavation. It relies on proved technology that we know works, and it is the most cost-effective way to achieve our safety goals. Next. So looking at this slide, it shows a diagram that's where we plan to do the excavation. We plan to use standard construction equipment to dig out about 3,000 cubic yards of the most contaminated shallow soil, going down about 3 to 15 feet deep. As you can see in the map, we are targeting specific areas across the site. Those are there with colors. These dots that you see in the map represent specific hotspots where we found the highest levels of chemicals like TC and metal. So basically, the target excavation, it is removing the contamination that we had identified that we're calling hotspots. Next slide. So to removing the shallow contamination, we will be removing permanently the source of metal and cyanide risk. Next slide. The treating the deeper contamination, we're going to be using the technology that's called bioremediation, where we use a process that helps nature, in this case, that's why the term bio, to clean up the site. We will inject a food grade material, some like a vegetable oil, into the ground. And it's not a harsh chemical, so it's a food grade vegetable oil. And that vegetable oil will be the food for the microbes that live in the soil. By feeding the microbes in place, we will be able to boost their population, and they're going to use the food to grow. And it is funny, but they breathe, instead of breathing the air, they use the chemicals to breathe. So in that process, they break down the TC contamination in non-toxic substance. It is a proven, effective, and much less disruptive way to clean up the groundwater. And the timeline. So what if this plan is approved by the community? What can you expect? We plan to have a continuous air monitoring to confirm that no dust and vapors leave the site. We plan to follow all City of Oakland ordinance for work hours and noise. So we're going to follow strictly the city and the Alameda County work hours and noise ordinance. Next slide. So here it shows what expects as a timeline and the community protection. First, I would like to mention that we are doing this the offsite investigation, which have started this week on December 8th and is going to continue to the December 19th. So this investigation, we will be collecting any soil vapors and vapors from the sewer piping, we call sewer vapor. And also we're gonna go with the dates and activities that's listed on this on the slide, which is the public comment period, which we're planning to have the remedial action plan going to the public comment by the end of 2026 or beginning 2027. If the plan is approved, we're planning to initiate the cleanup activities in 2027, 2028, and we anticipate the need of long-term monitoring, and that will be ongoing for many years to confirm the effectiveness of the remedy.
So if I could jump in just for 1 second, Mokes, and just mention, you will see some of our field workers in the area in the neighborhood. And so you may see them putting little notes or blocking off certain areas so that cars aren't blocking the areas so that they can do the testing. So we thank you again for helping the team to expedite the testing and have clear areas so that they can do the work needed for the Caltech metal finisher site. Thank you.
Yeah, next slide now, it is our closure, which it is how you can participate. So your participation is critical. And tonight it is the start of this conversation. And after this, the DTSC will release our formal cleanup plan, which is called the Remedial Action Plan. We go also with acronyms we call RAP, and that will open as a formal process that will open a 30-day public comment period where you can submit written comments. So this is this meeting us to pave out, introduce our understanding about the contamination that we have found on site, what it is a remedy that we are at this point considering. And when we finalize the remedial action plan, there will be a formal document that will be public available. You have opportunity to review it within 30 days and provide written comments, and we will address those comments. And once we have a community agreement with our proposal, we're going to be moving forward with the remedy that we are currently advocating if we have the community support. And I think, yeah, so I think now we can go to the next slide. And this is now the QA section, so it concludes our formal presentation. And we are here now to answer your question that you might have. And any questions about the cleanup alternatives, the timeline, or the testing that's happening right now in your neighborhood. Thank you.
So again, thank you for all these wonderful questions in the Q&A. So I'm just going to start from the top and we'll work our way down. So Moke, some of the questions may kind of go back and forth a little bit from what we were talking about earlier, but we saved all the questions and we want to make sure everyone's questions get answered. Again, thank you. So first question I have says, I had my drinking water tested and TCE was present. Who shall I send my results to?
Well, first, the test may change. It depends how the sampling has occurred. If your water has a presence of TCE, first, if you allow, we would like to sample that. So therefore, we are sure that the the concentration or the TC that you have detected in the ground on the drinking water has been properly tested. And also we will be communicating to the IMUD that they have TC on their drinkable water, which is not supposed to be. But please If you allow, we'll be happy to collect samples from your property to confirm if it does have TC in the drinkable water.
And I have also shared our contact information. So you can also email us that information and we can work with you to assist you in contacting the proper agency to help with that issue. Next question. Will it be necessary to sample privately owned properties? What are the risks to the property owners and residents?
Well, if I understood the question is about what risk would pose to the proper owners or residents if they allow us to collect samples in their property. I would
Well,
say,
I think the first part would be, is it necessary? So maybe like what's the need? I think you spoke about it in the presentation, but what is the need and then the risk?
okay, so our samplings are not imposed, they are volunteer. So the need that we have to collect the samples, it is first to us to be able to accomplish our mission, which is protecting human health. So having that understand about our mission, we intend to collect samples to trying to have a better understanding if that particular property or the residents that live in the building are at risk. So that's ultimately our goal, to collect the samples to proper assess if they are at risk. If they're at risk, if it is for vape intrusion, because this is an orphan site, it is where using state funds. The department, it will be installing mitigation measures to try to mitigate the indoor air quality. So therefore, the contamination that might be present in indoor air might be reduced to levels that's safe. So therefore, they will not pose health risk. For the soil samples, we're planning to collect soil samples on the backyard in the shallow depths. So we believe that's not going to impact the landscaping or damage any infrastructure that might be present on the property. And also for the indoor sampling, we have some canisters, which it is cylinders that we leave there for 24 hours to collect the samples, and they're not very invasive. In addition, we have what we recommended is installation of probes. That's a drill into the foundation, and we collect vapor that beneath the foundation. That's very important because if we collect only indoor samples, it will be very meaningful that we know exactly what kind of soil gas is accumulating beneath the house foundation. So having those two information, we'll be able to have a better assessment and determine if the air is impacted, and more so if the air is impacted from soil gas that's in the soil that might be coming from the site.
And Moki, you did use the term orphan site. And so I just wanted to talk about what an orphan site is. An orphan site, and I know it's kind of a horrible name, but it's a site that's contaminated where the person responsible or the company responsible is not available to pay for the remediation or the cleanup, or they may have gone bankrupt, but the company no longer exists. And so the state is then responsible for cleaning up that site. We call it an orphan site.
And I apologize for using our technical jargons, and James are here to correct on the spot. Thank you, James. And I think he explained well what orphan site means, but mostly it is the polluters were the responsible for the contamination. We try to the possible extent to identify them when we have a situation that we cannot be able to use legal measures to impose them to clean up the site. That's where we step back and use state funds to clean up the site, because we understand that the community cannot be posed to risks related to contamination if they are not the cause. So we are here as a state, use state funds for those type of sites that they don't have what we call responsible party that will be able to pay for the cost. So the state are taking that responsibility.
Yeah, that's part of our mission, is to protect Californians and the environment. Next question. And I think this goes back to when you were talking about some of the remedies. Does heating attract or repel the contamination from the heat source? And I think that was when you were talking about the heating
Yes.
of the ground.
Yeah, this is a technology that actually we call thermal remedy. There is a more technical term, but basically it is you're going to be drilling and add rods, and those rods are going to be connected to a power. Electricity power is going to heat up, and that heat is going to propagate in the soil. And because it's going to be in such level of such high temperature, that's the water is going to start getting warmer, and the chemicals that's inside the water and the soil is going to change to vapor. And at the surface, they'll have a system that's going to suck out all that vapor like a vacuum, and that vapor is going to be treated on site above the ground. So this is what we call a thermal treatment. And I have to point out on the presentation that we are stepping out from that approach because the site is surrounded by residential areas, and we think that having that technology, we need to have a very robust system to collect all the vapor that will be produced. And there is a risk that we're not going to be able to collect all that, and we may be able to actually make the problem worse than better. So we're trying to avoid that path.
Okay, I'm going to just double check with the Spanish interpreter to see. Doesn't look like we have any questions from the Spanish interpreter. I'm going to check with the uh, Chinese interpreter to see if we have any questions on the Chinese interpreter. Okay, it doesn't look like we have questions in Chinese or Spanish. So I'm going to go to the next Q&A question. The question is, what if contamination is found under and outside the cow finisher's site? What are the alternative actions, and how would this be funded?
Well, so we need to be specific on this, answer this question here, because if it is off-site, it might be other sites or other properties that might be contributing for that contamination. So we are here to talk about the Caltech site and the contamination that might be spreading from the site. So the remedy is intended to stop the spreading. So basically, once we implement the remedy, our intent it is that the groundwater that's moving out from the site will be contained. So therefore, we expect that the size of the contamination will diminish over time. Same thing for the soil gas. So once we treat the contamination on site and implement remedies that as the groundwater moves on the site and maybe carrying the contamination out, it will be what we call contained. The contamination will be reduced at the fence. So basically, once the groundwater moves away, we'll be having less and less contamination within.
And I think also too, that also goes back to the indoor access agreements that will be going through the neighborhood for the properties that are next door, across the street, and directly behind the site. We'll be asking for assistance in testing to make sure that we don't have any issues surrounding the site.
One thing also, yes?
I wanted to add on to Mokes's response. So the part that we're focused on right now is the remedy that's happening on the site. But part of the reason for the offsite investigation that we're currently working on is also to figure out if there needs to be an additional remedy offsite, and that could include some of the same features that we're looking at for the on-site remedy, which, as Mokes discussed, includes bioremediation. A nice thing about that being non-invasive, unlike excavation, is that that could be done offsite as well. And for the residences and testing those, Mokes had also mentioned earlier that if concentrations in the indoor air were higher than they should be, then we could also look at mitigation measures for specific residences, so that even while the subsurface is being treated, there could be measures to prevent contamination from coming into residences.
Thank you, Karina.
And I also want to add that, so having all that additional information that we are gathering, what we call off-site, so in the areas that not immediately related to the site, we are now getting information with this investigation. We will outreaching some residents to asking them if they will allow us to collect shallow soil samples in their property to find out if there is any metal contamination there on the shallow soil. If by any circumstance we find out there is any contamination on their property, we will address that. So we will be, I don't want to say that's, how far that will be, how spread is the contamination, we don't know. That's where we're going to be first in collecting samples on the properties that adjacent to the site. And if we do see any signs of contamination, we're going to be outreaching other properties to make sure that we have a fully understanding if there is contamination off-site related to the metals, how far they are, and we're going to be addressing that as well.
Thank you, Mokes. Yes, we're gathering more data and more information to make sure we're being protective of the community. Next question. Looks like it has to do with site ownership. Does Moms for Housing own the site, and how many units are planned? I'm guessing that it's that they're asking about the development of the site.
I am familiar with the Moms for Housing. It is a non-government organization that has outreached us, and they have expressed their interest in with the property, and they would like to develop the property for low-income residents, individuals, but they do not own the property. We have individuals and entities that does have their name associated with the parcels that constitute the site. So the site, it is split in 4 different parcels. We have outreach those individuals and entities that legally they have ownership of the site. They have tax defaults. They do not respond to us. And we're assuming that based on our search that we do not have a viable financial parties or viable proper owners to be able to pay for the cleanup. But this is once we have cleaned up the site, and it will be a change for the change of the proper ownership. There will be a discussion with the agencies of the Alameda County, the tax collector agency, and the department, because the department and the agency, we do have what we call past costs, which it is the state has spent money on those on the property, and a way that we protect ourselves is putting a lien on the property. So there is millions of dollars on lien on the property, but those will be in discussion later once we are moving more towards the completion of the remedy. So I think this is a early conversation, and we do not have all the information to be able to have a fully engaged conversation with the community about how the property ownership will be transferred to a party that's interested to develop the site to a residential.
And just to also be clear, DTSC, the Department of Toxic Substances Control, we oversee the cleanup and remediation of the property. Land use decisions are made by the city and the county. So we don't have the final authority on the land use, but we do oversee the cleanup and help to facilitate that so they can go ahead and do what they need to do for the land use decisions. Next question. That was a great question. This goes back to, I think, the time frame of the cleanup. The question is, that's a very long time frame. What are the limitations to speeding up this process?
Good question. I was on another side of the table, and I was always asked that question. Why it takes so long? So I can explain you here. For us, because the legal aspect takes a long time because we don't have proper owners. To just example, just to get access to the site, so it means we can go inside the site, we need to request an inspection warrant with the Superior Court. That effort takes about 4 months. So if I want to go to the site tomorrow, I can't. I need to plan ahead 4 months ahead, just because I need to prepare the legal documentation. This is just an example. Why we're going to take a year to have the remedial action plan? Well, to us to be able to come to this meeting and tell you that we are advocating to a cleanup alternative, and then a year from now in the meeting we're going to say yes, this cleanup alternative, it will work. We need to have data to support that, and exactly that's where we are at that stage. So we are now getting all the legal documents to get the inspection warrant. So therefore, in April, May, we'll be able to go to the site, collect soil samples, groundwater samples that we're going to be running what we call a pilot study to simulate the bioremediation technology. So with that, we're going to get more parameters. So we're going to know exactly how often and the amount of substrate we need to inject. So therefore, we have a better understanding in improving the remedy performance. So basically, it will take, maybe too long for the community perspective to go to the point that actually going to the remedial action plan, to go to the community plan, to go into the public comment. But having this treatability investigation done before is actually, in the big picture, is more advantageous because we're going to be able to clean it up the site, I would say not faster, but in a more controlled way.
So a smarter cleanup, especially using state funds and in a controlled manner so that we do it in the best possible method. Thank you, Mokes. So I have a question here. And just, it says, how does this public comment period differ from the last one earlier this year? So currently we are not in a public comment period. We're simply sharing information to keep the community informed and to get public involvement as we investigate and get more and more information, and to make sure that the community is protected to our best ability by sampling and getting indoor air tests from houses directly beside, in front of, and behind uh, the site. Was there any other public comment periods that you know of, Mo?
Yes, I was thinking what would be that question. I cannot see who are actually asking those questions, but I can tell you, as we are a agency, that we are very transparent about our decisions and actions. So during the time that we're developing and finalizing the remedial investigation feasibility study before this meeting, we had a meeting with a very few stakeholders that contact us. So instead of sending out that mailing list for in a distance about half mile from the site, we outreach the stakeholders that have contacted us. We gave them 30 days to review our final draft document. So therefore, we had a meeting with them where we went a little bit more technical, explaining the remedial investigation data and also the feasibility study process. That's the only thing I can imagine that's related to the site as far as public comment.
Yes.
Oh, did we have someone that wanted to ask a question or make a comment? Okay, we'll keep going forward. Again, thank you all for these really great questions and engaging with us. Next question. If a tenant is concerned about vapor intrusion, but the owner refuses, what are the options?
It's a good question, and it's a hard question to answer. Basically, first, the process is volunteer. So basically, we cannot force a volunteer process. So we cannot just say it's a mandatory. But there are legal instruments that we can use, and we can issue an order to the proper owner because they might be posing their tenants at human health risk. Or we can also issue an inspection warrant that will allow us to access the property to collect indoor sample. Of course, we don't want to go to that path because we want to build a relationship. We want to, be able to make that bridge to be able to protect the community. We don't want to, spend time and energy on a legal aspect. We want to spend our energy on the cleanup, on making sure that the communities are safe. So first, we really want a dialogue with the property owners, or that indicating to them that for the benefit of their tenants will be beneficial to allow us to collect samples there to make sure that the indoor quality is safe. Because ultimately, if the indoor quality is not safe, we are here promoting that if fundings are secured, we'll be able to install mitigation measures to improve the indoor quality until the remedy on the site has contained the contamination from spreading further and the contamination has been reduced.
I'm going to go ahead and put our contact information in the meeting chat. So that way, if you do have further questions on that, you can email or call and get some more information, or maybe we can get some more specifics on how we can help in that situation. So I've just put my contact information, Mokes's contact information, and phone number, and also the project manager's contact information. So any one of us can help, but reach out to us, reach out to me, and I can try and help also with those kinds of concerns. Okay, question is fruit grown along the property on 30th Street safe to eat?
So if you're asking questions about I would defer that to a toxicologist. They are not on the call to make sure that answer is properly answered, but I can provide my experience for a different site. For a different site, the same question was asked for the same type of contamination, specifically for volatile organic compounds. And the answer that was for that assigned toxicologist was it was safe for eating vegetables and fruits for the VOCs. But for the metals, if the soil it is impacted, it might be impact because different metals might be uptake to the plants. So that's why I would like to defer that answer to a later time. So if you can kindly provide your contact to us, so therefore we can properly address your question, because that's beyond my technical expertise, and we want to provide the right answer to you.
And again, our contact information is in the meeting chat, so please feel free to call or email, and we'll do our very best to answer that question with the person that has the proper information. Next question. The property owners have been unresponsive. Can't the DTSC and perhaps the country, maybe they meant county or city, ask for blanket to ensure access? To ensure access. So it looks like it's, to secure access. So it looks like it's a question about getting access to the site since the property owners have been unresponsive, and they're asking if DTSC, the county, or the city can secure some kind of access to the site.
As I have pointed out on my previous answer for a similar topic, we have legal instruments, which it is issuing an order or issuing an inspection warrant. Those are a very lengthy process, but if the tenants feel that's the only resource that they can have, please contact us. And first, we're going to try to identify the name of the proper owner based on our database. So therefore, we can first engage with them, explain the nature of this sampling. Hopefully, we can come to a more amicable way to resolve. If it does not have that, and if the tenant has expressed the desire to have their air tested, we will escalate.
Thank you, Mokes. We have, I think that was the last question. And so we can go to the next slide.
I think the next slide is only the slide 35, which is just our contact information.
And so for any of those that live near the site, directly in front, directly beside, directly behind, or very, very close to the site, we would hope that you could stay with us at the end of the meeting and talk with us. And we'd like to talk to you about some of the testing and other things that we're doing. And so it would be wonderful if you could stay with us. I'm going to also share in the chat the EnviroStore database has more information on the site. So you can go to that link and find all the information, all the testing, all the documents that we have in our database regarding the Caltech metal finishers site. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Mokes?
No, I think I'm okay with. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today, and look forward to hearing from you. You have our contact information. You can take a picture on the screen, or you can use the information in the meeting chat. And we look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to serving the community. Is there anyone that will, at this point, we'll end the meeting, and anyone that would like to stay and chat with us about their property, we can talk with you and share some information about the indoor air testing. That's the free indoor air testing that we're doing in the community at no cost.
And thank you for all to be on this meeting, and we appreciate the opportunity that you gave to us to further explain the results that we gathered and also the cleanup remedy that we're advocating. We really appreciate your time that you provided to us to accomplish our mission. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, are there any people who live right next door to the site that would like to chat with us, if you could kindly click the raise your hand button, and we can talk with you and get your information, and we can or just talk with you about how we can do the indoor air testing and coordinate that with you. Please feel free to click the raise your hand button, or you could even just send us an email. All right, it looks like we don't have any takers. Again, thank you for joining us, and that concludes the Caltech Metal Finishers community meeting.